Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got 5 ridiculously cool knives to share with you guys. There's going to be a mix of some stuff that you've seen before, some of you, and some things that you definitely have not seen before. Some of this stuff I have not actually yet uploaded the unboxing content for, but it's kind of fun to just sort of rapid fire go through this stuff. So I'm gonna let you guys know about a bunch of stuff that you might not know about. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. We're gonna link everything down in the description. Some of this is not available, but I still want you guys to have links so you can go and look at least. Starting off with something that just dropped this last week from Maxace. The Maxace Dragon Knight. Now, I described this in the unboxing as something that looks like it came out of that, you know, the Jeeps in the original Jurassic Park, and they open it up and there's like night vision goggles in there. I feel like this could have been in that same thing, right? It looks like a toy, but it's actually ridiculously premium. Number one, the sword pocket clips, just insane. We have this huge wraparound titanium backspacer. A lot of this looks like Cerakote to me. We'll get to those details when I actually review it. But there's just an enormous amount of detail. Very, very, you know, it's a premium knife that is almost disguised to look like something that's super inexpensive, like something, you know, that came out of like the 90s, I guess. Maybe it looks like almost like a Power Ranger knife kind of. So I'm not sure exactly what their inspiration was. You can kind of guess with the Dragon Knight thing, you know, maybe. But the funny thing is, you're looking at an enormous amount of titanium. Look at this lanyard bar. I realized after I did the unboxing video, this random bar that looks like something that you would attach a Lego man's hand to, right? I was like, this is where they want you to put the lanyard. How weird, how ridiculous. It does come with a tool to take a lot of this stuff off, since it kind of looks like proprietary hardware. But in true Maxace fashion, Maxace has proven that they can absolutely make an inexpensive, or, you know, a well-priced premium knife that is fully, you know, utility oriented and basically just straightforward, right? They can do that. But I think what they really like to do is make crazy stuff, and that's what this is. This is an M398 blade with multiple individual pieces of titanium, absolutely supreme, complex machining, all of that. It's Maxace doing what Maxace does best, and they're just unapologetically wacky, and I think that's really cool. This is bound to be a ridiculously expensive knife. This is probably the most tame of the color schemes. The other ones include what I referred to as peppermint and Joker. You have a green and purple combo with one, and then a red and white combo with one. Whichever variation you go with, it's going to be really, really striking. So yeah, very cool, very odd. Definitely not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Moving on here, here's something else that I have not yet unboxed, and it's no surprise that they are planning on doing this. This is a prototype version of the Midgard's Messer, what do they call it? The Nano Valhalla. I keep wanting to say mini. They've already done that. This is the Nano Valhalla prototype. So I've actually unboxed every single version of this knife on my channel, and it is super weird. Look at this. It's just bizarre. I love that Midgard's Messer in a lot of ways is a lot like Maxace. They can make a quality, straightforward, utilitarian folding knife if they want to, but they're like, why? There's a bajillion of those out there, and they're right. I mean, if that's their philosophy, they intentionally make wild and crazy things, usually overbuilt things, right? So I just like that they go for it. I think it's neat, and it creates for really, I mean, as a content creator, I mean, they're a dream, right? Because otherwise I'd be sitting here going, and now here's another Ontario Rat Model 2 with blue scales. Maybe soon they'll make one with red scales. Like, do you want to watch that? No, you don't want to. Nobody wants to watch that, right? This is what we want, even if it's ridiculous. This is the kind of stuff that's fun. It will, again, almost certainly cost too much money, and it will probably have an underwhelming steel. That's kind of, you know, unfortunately what we see a lot. But this is neat, and it's a Tanto, right? And it's more so just it's going to be a casual, like it's fully functional. I wouldn't put too much stock into those locking tabs, but it is super cool. And it, obviously, it's like, of course, they're going to make a mini one. So eventually that'll be available at Tools for Gents, which is linked down in the description. I don't know exactly when, but they just sent this to me with a little note that said prototype on it. So there you go. Moving on here, a knife that is absolutely available right now, and a knife that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. This is the Blade Binge and Devo Knives Chaser. Actually, the dark mode Chaser, the exclusive black and kind of cyan setup that is directly through Blade Binge. This is a really, really cool knife. A fantastic utilitarian profile here with just a little bit of flair, just a little bit of dressiness. But if memory serves me correct, it's, well, I mean, I know the material is titanium and S90V, but if memory serves me correct, they're hitting the S90V much higher than what we normally see it, which is 61 to 62. This will have outrageously good edge retention. It's also stupidly thin behind the edge. If you are big into geometry and HRC and some of these, super high-end steels, this is a fantastic EDC knife. And considering what we typically see in this part of the knife world, when you combine things like titanium, precision machining, super low tolerances, and S90V. They are hyper competitive even with companies like Artisan Cutlery, who typically have nearly impossible price tags on their stuff, right? So this is still an expensive knife, but when we're comparing to everything else that's out there, I think these come in at like $225. I thought that was really amazing. Now, I would love for this all to be DLC. That would have been the cherry on top. I think it's probably like a tumbled DLC or something like that. I'm sorry, not DLC, PVD, right? So it's not a special coating or anything, but man, that would be super cool. But still, in this form, I think this is wonderful. I think this is a really, really good one. And it's a great example of how you can take a pretty generic profile and still do fun things with it, still do things to make it look unique, with the area back here, which does allow you to swap out the pocket clip for lefty carry, right? But these little areas right here that just look a little bit different in the color setup. I love this color in contrast with black. I love the texturing, right? Cool blade shape, kind of a drop, like a modified drop point, sheep's footy kind of thing. I'm not really sure exactly what I want to call it, but you get a nice tip, a stupidly thin edge. I mean, I cannot stress this enough. Certain knives, they just, when they have that geometry, God, this is a laser beam. It's a laser beam, right? It's just paper, obviously, but with that geometry and S90V heat treated like that, that's just going to cut and cut and cut, and it's just going to be essentially no resistance. It's one of those knives that's such a joy to cut with, and you should definitely not miss out on it because it's great. Moving on here, a fun little guy, just a little nifty little guy here. We have the Blades to Be and Midgard's Messer Braggy. Look at this little thing. He calls this lock, which is something, I haven't dug into this yet. He's got something on his page that explains, his Instagram page that explains how this lock operates. But you pull down and the blade just drops. And yes, in the open position, this super high polished little blade has 0 blade play. I mean, this is a ridiculously high polish. You can see me. You can see up my nose right there. You can see me. This is an incredibly high polished finish. With this being a Midgard's Messer, and by the way, this is going to be limited to a run of 600 pieces apparently, but we have titanium, and this has been, like I always call it plasma ano, but it's like a lightning ano. We got some cool, almost looks like filing back there on the spine. If you're wondering, is the edge thick? Yes, it is. This is definitely not a knife that you buy if you want like perfect cutting geometry. But for as many of you who asked me what that small square knife is in my intro, I'll tell you all at once. It's the Curtis Knives ODT. And when you look up the price tag, you're going to be disappointed. And you're also going to be disappointed because the thing basically doesn't exist anymore. So, considering what that was, and so many people are interested in it, I feel like a lot of you will be interested in this. I don't really care that this is a tip-down carry knife. It doesn't bother me at all because of the size of the object. Usually little tiny things like this don't it's like not fun or convenient to deploy it or manipulate the lock, but because of where he put the flipper tab and because of where he put the locking system, got to make sure that it closes all the way. It actually is super convenient to use. It's fun. This is basically just a fun little package opener. That's what I would use it for. But it's neat, and it will almost certainly come in a few different configurations, so you don't have to have the rainbow-looking, Nano on there. You'd probably just do like plain Jane ones. But I thought this was really fun, and I usually hate these weird little micro knives. So I don't think I've unboxed this one yet. But when that video comes up, you should watch it because I was very overjoyed with this. I love finding variations of knives that I typically don't like, and then I end up liking it for some little, weird little detail. So. And finally, a knife that you can no longer get, and it is absurdly expensive, but you guys knew that this knife was going to make this into this video. If you haven't seen this knife yet, oh boy, you're in for a treat. This is the Mundus Knives al-khem Genesis. This is a special version of the al-khem. Oh, look at that. That is wild. What the heck is going on here? It doesn't even look like a usable knife. It's basically not. This is a knife that is essentially a big art piece and a big flex by Mundus, who again is a company that is perfectly capable of making basic utilitarian cutting tools. But their claim to fame is making ridiculous objects and showing off their complex design work and complex machining. I've only handled 2 knives from them, and they're both absolutely absurd and do things that I have never seen a knife do in my entire life. What's really cool here is that the blade actually splits from this center piece right here. So I'm going to push it back in there, and we're going to rotate that pivot to bring it together, which is wild. Now, if you're wondering, is that a gold blade? Kind of. Underneath is actually a hardened M390 blade, which is funny because it's basically not sharp. Excuse me, I almost coughed there. One side is absolutely an intentional false edge, and the other side has been brought down to an edge that will cut if you really try. Like I'll show you here. Like if I take this and angle it just right, I can make it cut paper, right? But it doesn't do it well, but it's hardly the point. The point of this knife is, again, it's Mundus saying, here we are, this is what we can do. We do things that nobody else can do. And you might be asking yourself, but if it can't be a knife, then why do it? Let me introduce you to a huge part of the knife community. People like me, enthusiasts who are interested in knives that go so far past the purpose, the base purpose of a cutting tool. That in and of itself is actually what makes it interesting. An object typically designed to do one specific thing, and it does a whole bunch of other completely nonsensical things. I find this, as a reviewer who touches thousands of boring knives, I find this to be infinitely fascinating. These are very popular. We've seen the base al-khem on all social media platforms. This Genesis variation before me, I think had only been seen a couple of times. And I'm really happy to add this one to my collection. But back to the blade, anyways. This knife has definitely fascinated a lot of people, not just because it transforms, so to speak, but because the blade is gold. So what is that? Is it just like a polished coating? It's actually 24 karat gold plating, which is absurd and doesn't need to be on a knife. But Mundus says, we're going to do it anyway, and we're not going to apologize for it, which I think is really cool. How this actually operates, I haven't actually, dug into it yet, but I believe Mundus has a video that explains what's happening. But what I'm doing here with the pivot, I'm actually pushing in on it and rotating it. So you have to figure out which way it goes. So when it's all the way this way, the blade is going to split. When it's all the way this way, the blade is going to be together. So now that if I pull back on this, which is actually bizarre in and of itself, this piece right here, it's all separate or individual pieces that come together and allow the release of the blade. Don't even get me started on the wacky backspace. It almost looks like it's like titanium stitches, right? When I pull back here, now the blade comes apart. You might be wondering, is it rattly? Does it have play? No. Whatever is holding it in place is completely and totally solid. You guys might like this. From this position, you cannot do this in the other position where when the blade's together, you can't rotate it, make it split. But when it's out, when it's not together, you can rotate the pivot and make it come back together, which is a very interesting thing to behold, because the way that it comes back together is absolute perfection. It is perfection. This is ridiculous. It absolutely looks, people called Power Ranger knife. I'd say, okay, to be more specific and to be more accurate, it looks like something from Warhammer 40K or World of Warcraft. I mean, it has to have been inspired at least partially by that. There's a little bit of steampunk there. You could probably, say there's some other influences for sure. But this was created by somebody or a few people who said, here are our influences. It's based on, popular high fantasy video games. And then we're going to take everything that we know about design work and machining, and we're going to make something completely ridiculous just to shock the world. And they did that. They knew that eventually that a lot of content creators would get a hold of this thing and show it off. And it has made an enormous impact. So it's a big risk, I think, to create something like this, because you might guess this is not a cheap object. Companies can't just slap things like this together and charge $100 for it. It's ridiculous, right? So you will never see this exactly on Temu or on AliExpress. You'll never see it because there's so few companies right now who are able to make things like this, right? It takes a very special type of designer, a very special type of like super precision OEM to be able to produce something like this. So it's not something that is easily copied, right? So what does it actually cost? Well, the standard al-khem, which I don't think they have any available right now, but they're definitely planning on making more. I believe the base price of those is about $1,300, and that's standard titanium and M390. This full solid Damascus version, the Genesis version, with the gold-plated M390 blade, they only made 8 of them for U.S. markets, and this is one of them. They are all sold, and they sold for $5,000 each. And then there's one more that is still available on their website. It's the museum version, which has a lot of hand engraving and a lot of, I'll let you guys look it up if you want. That one goes for $20,000. Oh my gosh. Such a cool thing. It's absolutely, as soon as I realized that this existed, it's not the first time that I have acquired a ultra ridiculously expensive knife. It's still actually within, it's a pretty insane area for sure, but I have other purchases that are similar. But as soon as I found out that this existed, I thought this is exactly the type of thing that I love. And there's so much about this that I love. I have to have that. And so I'm really glad that I picked up, I think, actually the last available one. It's just really, really cool. I just wanted to share it again with you guys for anybody who hasn't seen. But yeah. So anyways, this was a fun episode. Mostly just for entertainment. But legitimately, I do recommend, if you're looking for your next like premium realistic EDC knife, the Chaser at Blade Binge is definitely a good one. So anyways, going back over these, we have the Mundus Knives al-khem Genesis. We have the Blades to Be and Midgard's Messer Braggy. We have the Blade Binge and Devo Chaser. We have the Midgard's Messer, is it the Micro? I keep messing it up. The Nano Valhalla. And then we have finally the Maxace Dragon Knight for a complete, what a ridiculous bunch this is. But yeah, this was a fun one to do today. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.